The morning Earth's future changed forever started like any other at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, and the usual buzz of international diplomacy filled the air. That was until every screen in the building suddenly went dark, only to light up again with a message that would alter human history. Greetings, Earth. The Galactic Council seeks diplomatic contact. At first, many thought it was a prank, but when the massive ship appeared over the UN building, hovering silently like a metallic cloud, all doubt vanished. The ship's surface shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist, displaying technology far beyond human understanding. The first aliens to step into the General Assembly Hall looked almost disappointingly normal, humanoid figures in flowing robes, though their skin had a peculiar bluish tint and their eyes were slightly too large. The lead diplomat, who called himself First Speaker Green, carried what looked like a small silver cube. "We bring greetings from the Galactic Council," the cube translated in a flat, mechanical voice. "We are pleased to welcome Earth into the greater community of spacefaring civilizations." That's when things started to get interesting. The UN Secretary General stood to deliver Earth's formal response. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you and look forward to peaceful cooperation between our peoples." The alien's translator cube made an odd buzzing sound, and First Speaker Green's face contorted in what looked like confusion. "Apologies, but our universal translator is detecting multiple language patterns. Why are your people using different communication systems?" The Secretary General blinked in surprise. "Well, Earth has many nations and cultures, each with their own languages. We have over 7,000 spoken languages currently in use." The entire alien delegation took a physical step backward. Their translator cube started emitting the high-pitched whine. 7,000. First Speaker Green's voice trembled slightly. "This is unprecedented. All civilized species develop a single unified communication system before achieving spacefaring status. Multiple language systems indicate dangerous thought pattern fragmentation." A young diplomat from India stood up. "With all due respect," she said with a slight smile, "our multiple languages aren't a weakness. They're one of our greatest strengths. Each language offers unique ways of seeing and describing the world." When the cube translated this, 3 of the alien delegates clutched their heads as if in pain. First Speaker Green's large eyes widened even further. "Please," he said, "refrain from using metaphorical language constructs. Our translator is having difficulty processing your linguistic anomalies." Another human diplomat, this one from Brazil, couldn't help but laugh. "You're pulling our leg, right? How can you have interstellar travel without figuring out metaphors?" The translator cube made a sound like shattering glass, and one of the alien delegates collapsed. "Medical emergency," First Speaker Green shouted into a device on his wrist. "Cognitive cascade failure." The fallen delegate was quickly teleported away, presumably back to their ship. The remaining aliens huddled together, looking at the human diplomats with what could only be described as fear. First Speaker Green seemed to struggle for words. "We must report this situation to the Council. Your species appears to possess Class 1 cognitive hazard potential through mere linguistic communication." The Secretary General tried to salvage the situation. "I'm sure we can work this out. Perhaps we could teach you about our languages gradually, in a controlled setting." "Your offer is noted," First Speaker Green replied stiffly. "But until we understand the full implications of your linguistic capabilities, all further communication will be conducted through text only, using our standardized basic trade language." With that, the aliens retreated hastily, leaving behind a room full of bewildered human diplomats. As they departed, one of the alien delegates could be heard muttering through the translator cube, "A species that thinks in multiple language patterns simultaneously. How do their minds not shatter?" The Secretary General looked around the silent assembly hall, then said what everyone was thinking. "Well, that could have gone better." Little did anyone know, This was just the beginning of humanity's linguistic troubles with the wider galaxy. 3 months after first contact, the Galactic Council's Science Division set up a research facility in Geneva. The gleaming building, with its spiral architecture that seemed to defy gravity, stood out among Earth's traditional structures. Inside, some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds were struggling with a puzzle they never expected to face. Dr. Blue, the lead alien researcher, stared at his display screen with all 4 of his eyes. "Impossible," he muttered, watching the brain scans of humans during casual conversation. "Their neural patterns shouldn't be stable." The human scientists working with him had grown used to such outbursts. What seemed normal to them apparently broke several laws of cognitive science as understood by the galaxy. "Look at this," Dr. Blue pointed at the swirling patterns. "When humans switch between languages, they're not just changing communication systems, they're literally rewiring their thoughts in real time. And somehow, they don't go insane." One of the human researchers, Dr. Thomas, shrugged. "We've been doing it for thousands of years. Many of us speak 3 or 4 languages. Some people speak dozens." The medical scanner monitoring Dr. Blue's vital signs peeped in warning as his stress levels spiked. The real breakthrough, or breakdown, depending on who you asked, came during a simple poetry reading experiment. The research team had invited a group of multilingual humans to recite poetry in different languages while they monitored the effects on alien observers. A student read a simple haiku in Japanese, followed by translations in English and Spanish. 3 alien researchers immediately experienced what they described as reality fragmentation. Their brains, used to processing information in strict, logical patterns, couldn't handle the multiple layers of meaning packed into such compact language. "It's not just the multiple languages," Dr. Blue explained to the emergency response team later. "It's how humans layer meaning. They say one thing to mean another. They create new concepts by combining unrelated words. They can communicate complex ideas through primitive sound pattern combinations called rhymes. Their minds are like. He stopped, realizing he was about to use a metaphor, something his species had never done before encountering humans. The findings only got more disturbing for the galactic scientists. They discovered that humans could process multiple meanings of the same word simultaneously, understand context without explicit explanation, create new meanings through tone of voice alone, communicate complex emotions through simple sound changes, invent new words and concepts instantly through combination. Their language isn't just a tool, Dr. Blue reported to the council. It's a weapon, an unintentional one, but potentially the most dangerous we've ever encountered. The human scientists tried to explain that this was just how language naturally evolved on Earth, but this only made things worse. The idea that such a powerful force could develop randomly, without careful engineering and safety protocols, terrified the galactic community. The final straw came when Dr. Thomas tried to explain puns to an alien colleague. The concept of words deliberately having multiple meanings for humor caused such severe cognitive dissonance that the alien had to be placed in a neural stabilization chamber for 3 days. "We have to face facts," Dr. Blue wrote in his final report. "Human language operates on principles that violate everything we know about safe cognitive development. Their casual conversations contain enough mimetic hazards to destabilize entire communication networks. And the worst part, they don't even realize what they're doing." As the research facility prepared to shut down, Dr. Thomas found Dr. Blue in his office, staring out the window at the Swiss mountains. "You know," Dr. Blue said carefully, using the simplified trade language, "I almost used a metaphor earlier today. I caught myself, but I wanted to. That's never happened before. Your languages, they're changing how I think." "Isn't that a good thing?" Dr. Thomas asked. "Expanding your mental horizons." Dr. Blue's skin darkened with fear. "Good? Your species really doesn't understand. You've created something that can rewrite minds, and you use it to tell jokes." The next day, The Galactic Council declared all human languages to be potentially hazardous materials. The real trouble was about to begin. The trade conference on Space Station 7 should have been routine. Representatives from 50 alien species gathered with human diplomats to discuss shipping routes and resource sharing. The station's artificial gravity hummed quietly, and holographic displays showed trade statistics floating in the air. The trouble started during what should have been a simple lunch break. Two human diplomats sat with a group of alien traders, sharing stories over their meals. The aliens used basic trade language, carefully avoiding complex concepts. The humans tried to stick to simple terms, following the new safety guidelines. "And then," said the human diplomat named Jack, forgetting himself for a moment. The salesman was so slick, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. The universal translator hummed, processing the idiom. Before anyone could stop it, the translated phrase reached the aliens' translation devices. The effect was immediate and devastating. 3 of the alien traders froze in place. Their eyes began to dart back and forth rapidly as their brains tried to process the impossible concept. One of them, a tall creature with silver skin, started muttering equations. But, why would someone buy frozen water if they live in a frozen environment? The economic logic is recursive. The implications of artificial scarcity. The philosophical paradox. The station's medical alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed across the dining hall as more aliens started showing signs of cognitive distress. The simple idiom had created a chain reaction of confusion and paradox through the translator network. "Emergency protocol," shouted the station's security chief. "Shut down all translation devices." But it was too late. The damage was done. Across the dining hall, different species reacted in different ways to the linguistic virus that had just been unleashed. The logical processors began solving endless equations trying to understand the economic implications. The empathic readers curled into balls, overwhelmed by the layers of human humor and deception. The hive mind collectors started spawning new consciousness threads to analyze the concept from multiple angles, overwhelming their neural networks. Station medical staff rushed in with neural stabilizers, but they had never dealt with anything like this. The human concept had infected the very way these beings thought. "What's happening to them?" Jack asked, watching in horror as his lunch companions were rushed to the medical pods. The station's medical chief, a creature that looked like a floating cloud of light, answered grimly. "Their minds are trying to process too many layers of meaning at once. Humans can handle it because your brains evolved with this chaos. But for species that developed with logical, straightforward communication, it's like a computer virus." The incident lasted only 20 minutes, but its effects would echo across the galaxy. 17 different species experienced cognitive disruptions. 3 trading companies immediately declared bankruptcy because their leaders couldn't stop calculating ice-selling probability matrices. 1 religious group declared humans to be demons who could bend reality with words. In the aftermath, Jack sat in the station's detention center, trying to explain to security officials what had happened. "It was just a saying," he said for the 100th time. "A figure of speech. We use them all the time to make points about." He stopped, realizing that even explaining the concept of figurative language might cause more problems. The station commander, wearing a neural dampening field, read from a glowing report. "One simple human phrase has caused more mental health incidents than the last 50 years of galactic conflicts combined. How do you defend this?" "We didn't know," Jack replied quietly. "We didn't know our words could hurt you like this." The commander's face showed something between fear and awe. "Your species casually throws around concepts that can shatter minds, and you claim ignorance. The Council will not look kindly on this." As Jack was escorted to a transport ship heading back to Earth, he heard 2 alien security officers whispering. "Did you hear? They have something called poetry. They deliberately scramble words to create beauty. Stop. Even talking about their language techniques could be dangerous. The incident would become known across the galaxy as the Ice Cellar event. It marked the beginning of the end for free human speech in galactic society. But for humans, it marked something else. The first realization that their words held power beyond anything they had imagined. The Galactic Council's high-security research facility floated in deep space, far from any inhabited worlds. After the Ice Cellar event, the Council had moved all human language research to this remote location. They weren't taking any more chances. Inside the facility's main laboratory, hundreds of screens displayed human brain scans, language patterns, and warning symbols. A team of the galaxy's top scientists worked behind multiple layers of neural shielding, studying what they now called the human language threat. "Watch this," said lead researcher White, pointing to a screen showing the human child learning to speak. Even their offspring naturally develop these dangerous linguistic patterns. It's not taught, it's built into their biology. The research team had made several shocking discoveries about human language. First, they found that humans didn't just speak their languages. They dreamed in them. When shown recordings of human dreams, 3 research assistants had to be rushed to emergency care. The swirling mix of symbols, meanings, and emotions proved too much for their structured minds. Second, they discovered that humans could think in multiple languages at once. The scans showed humans casually switching between languages mid-thought, treating complex communication patterns like a mental playground. "It gets worse," said assistant researcher Gray, wearing a triple-strength neural dampener. "Look at what happens when they tell stories to their children." The screen showed a parent reading Little Red Riding Hood to a child. As the story progressed, alarm lights flashed across the laboratory. The simple children's tale contained metaphorical thinking, anthropomorphized animals, hidden meanings, moral lessons disguised as entertainment, multiple layers of symbolic representation. Their children's stories would be classified as military-grade psychic weapons in any other context, Gray noted, shuddering. The breakthrough in understanding came from an unexpected source. A junior researcher discovered that Earth was unique in the galaxy for having evolved multiple competing species of intelligent life during its history. Humans had developed their complex language abilities as a survival mechanism, allowing them to outthink and outmaneuver their evolutionary rivals. They turned their entire planet into a linguistic arms race, White explained to the Council in an emergency broadcast. While other species developed claws or poison, humans developed the ability to reshape reality through abstract thought and complex communication. The Council representatives watched in horror as the research team demonstrated how a simple human poem could create what they called cognitive resonance cascades in alien minds. The combination of rhythm, metaphor, and emotional content proved as dangerous as any known weapon. Even their simplest communications contain these hazards, White continued. What they call small talk can cause severe psychological damage to unprepared minds. Their concept of sarcasm alone violates 13 different galactic laws about truthful communication. In the facility's high-security wing, a group of volunteer researchers had been studying human humor. All of them now required daily neural recalibration. They couldn't stop trying to understand why chickens would cross roads and what the deeper meaning behind such actions might be. "We have to face a difficult truth," White said in his final report. "Human language isn't just a communication tool. It's the most sophisticated cognitive weapon system we've ever encountered. And the humans developed it by accident." The report concluded with a chilling observation. Humans were still evolving linguistically. New words, phrases, and concepts were being created every day. The threat wasn't just present, it was growing. In a sealed room at the facility's core, a team of specialists studied a human text that had been classified as maximum security risk. Its title, Dictionary of Puns and Wordplay. "How?" whispered one researcher, their protective helmet glowing with strain. "How can they handle words having multiple meanings at the same time? How can they find this entertaining?" The answer to that question would help determine the fate of human language in galactic society. But as the researchers would soon discover, trying to suppress human creativity would only make things more interesting. The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched a mile high, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 suns. Representatives from over 10,000 worlds gathered for what many called the most important debate in galactic history. The topic: what to do about human language. The emergency session had been called after 6 more language-related incidents across the galaxy. A human tourist had accidentally sent an entire spaceport into chaos by trying to explain the concept of knock-knock jokes. Council Leader Prime stood at the central podium, their silver skin glowing with concern. We face an unprecedented crisis. The human language situation can no longer be ignored. The human delegation sat in a specially shielded booth, their words filtered through the simplest possible translation system. They watched as alien species, one after another, rose to speak against them. "Their language is a plague," shouted the representative of the logic worlds, their mechanical translator buzzing with emotion. "My people are still recovering from exposure to human poetry. 3 of our greatest philosophers had to have their minds wiped after trying to understand something called interpretive dance." The trading guild spoke next. "We've lost billions in revenue. Our predictive AI systems crash every time they try to process human marketing slogans. How can we trade with a species that says one thing and means another?" More complaints followed. The hive minds reported their collective consciousness fractured after exposure to human novels. The quantum scientists couldn't handle human concepts of time described through tenses. The empaths were overwhelmed by the emotional content packed into simple human greetings. The human delegation's leader, Ambassador Reed, finally stood to speak. The chamber fell silent, neural shields humming at maximum power. "We understand your fears," Reed said carefully, using only approved basic trade language. "But our languages are not weapons. They are who we are. They shape how we think, how we feel, how we dream. Taking them away would be like taking our souls." A murmur ran through the chamber. 3 delegates had to be treated for exposure to the concept of souls. "Look at what we've given you already," Reed continued. "Since meeting us, your poets have written new forms of verse. Your scientists have discovered new ways of thinking. Your children have learned to imagine." "Exactly the problem," interrupted the education minister of the logic worlds. "Our youth are beginning to use metaphors." The word was spoken like a curse. "Next they'll want to tell jokes." The debate raged for 3 days. Some species called for Earth's complete isolation. Others suggested forcing humans to use only approved mathematical communication. The more extreme voices wanted to ban human language entirely. An unexpected voice of support came from the Ancient Ones, a species so old they remembered the galaxy's youth. Their representative, a being of pure energy, spoke rarely, but now they rose. "In our long memory," they said, their words translated into pure thought, "we have seen many threats to galactic peace, but we have never seen anything like human language. It is dangerous, yes. It is chaotic, certainly, but it is also beautiful." The chamber erupted in argument. The word beautiful had to be quarantined in 7 different translation matrices. Finally, Council Leader Prime called for order. "We must decide. The human language issue threatens the cognitive stability of our entire civilization. Yet their worlds are now part of our community. What can be done?" The vote that followed would change the fate of human language in the galaxy. But as the Council was about to learn, trying to regulate how humans communicated would prove more challenging than they imagined. Ambassador Reed watched the voting lights flash across the chamber's walls. In her mind, she recalled an old Earth saying about trying to catch the wind in a net. She kept that thought carefully untranslated, behind her neural shields. Some things, she knew, were beyond the Council's power to control. Human creativity was one of them. The day the Galactic Council outlawed human language, Earth's skies filled with warning beacons. Their red lights blinked in perfect sync, broadcasting the Council's decision in simple trade language. By order of the Galactic Council, All Earth languages are now classified as Class 1 cognitive hazards. In New York, London, Beijing, and every major city, the giant holograms displayed the new laws. 1. No human language allowed in public spaces beyond Council territory. 2. All human communications must use approved basic trade speech. 3. Earth languages restricted to Earth only. 4. All human literature classified as dangerous material. 5. Mandatory neural shields in all areas where humans gather. At the United Nations, Ambassador Reeb stood before the emergency session, her hand shaking as she read the full ruling. The Council had gone even further than expected. "They're not just banning our languages," she said, her voice tight with anger. "They're quarantining Earth's entire cultural output. Books, movies, songs, everything." The details were worse than anyone had imagined. The Council had created a new agency, the Department of Human Language Containment. Their ships now patrolled space, scanning for unauthorized use of Earth languages. In orbit, alien ships began installing massive translation fields. These fields would automatically convert any human speech into approved basic trade speech before it could reach alien ears. The effects were immediate and devastating. Human students in galactic universities had to learn complex mathematics just to express simple thoughts. Tourist spots that once welcomed humans now displayed warning signs. Basic trade speech only. Violators will be neural cleansed. But the Council had underestimated human nature. In a small cafe in Paris, a human trader discovered that humming certain tunes could bypass the translation fields. On a space station near Alpha Centauri, college students invented a sign language that looked like casual gestures. The Council's enforcers quickly found themselves playing an impossible game of linguistic whack-a-mole. "Sir," reported one frustrated officer, "they're now using something called interpretive dance to tell stories. How do we regulate body movement?" Another filed a confused report. "The humans are exchanging pictures they call memes. They're communicating through shared jokes in image form. What classification do we put on visual humor?" The Department of Human Language Containment's headquarters became a museum of confiscated items. Poetry books locked in quantum vaults. Music sealed in psychic dampening fields. Movies that could only be viewed through AI filters that removed all metaphors. But for every restriction, humans found a creative workaround. Underground language clubs sprang up across the galaxy. Alien youth secretly met with humans to learn forbidden speech. Some alien rebels even began creating their own poetry, hidden from the Council's mind scanners. Ambassador Reed sat in her office, watching the sunset through the neural shielding field that now surrounded Earth. On her desk, a message from the Council glowed. "Final warning. Full compliance required within 1 standard month." She picked up an old book of Shakespeare's sonnets, now classified as a Class 1 cognitive weapon. Reading a few lines, she smiled, remembering how the Council scientists had nearly short-circuited trying to understand, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" A junior diplomat rushed in, excitement breaking through his professional manner. "Ambassador, you need to see this. We found a way to encode complete sentences into official trade manifests. The Council's own bureaucracy can become our secret language." Reed looked at the growing stack of reports on her desk, each detailing a new way humans had found to express themselves despite the ban. The Council thought they could contain human creativity with laws and neural shields. They were about to learn that language, like life, finds a way. As night fell over Earth, millions of humans looked up at the warning beacons and remembered another time when speaking their minds had been forbidden. History had shown again and again. Trying to silence human voices only made them more determined to be heard. The real question wasn't whether Earth's languages would survive. The question was what would happen to the galaxy when they did. 6 months after the language ban, the Galactic Council faced an unexpected crisis. Their own young had started rebelling in the most dangerous way possible. They were learning to tell jokes. Emergency alarms blared through the council's headquarters as the chief of language containment delivered his report. It's spreading faster than we can control. Last week, we caught an entire school of young processors trying to write haiku. The council chamber, once a model of perfect order, now buzzed with worried whispers. Reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Alien music started showing emotional patterns similar to human songs. Trade languages developed new words for abstract concepts. Young aliens began telling stories just for fun. The final straw came during a routine council session. A young alien delegate stood to speak about trade regulations and accidentally used a metaphor. Instead of chaos, the chamber fell silent in surprise. Everyone had understood it perfectly. Ambassador Reed received the emergency summons to the council chamber that evening. As she entered, she noticed something different. The neural shields were turned off. Council Leader Prime spoke first, their voice carrying a new tone. Something almost like humor. It seems, Ambassador, that we face an interesting situation. In trying to contain your languages, we have instead caught ourselves in a, what do you humans call it? Ah yes, a pickle. Several delegates gasped at the deliberate use of a human idiom. The Ancient One's representative glowed with amusement. We have discovered something remarkable. Exposure to human language patterns, in small doses, doesn't damage our minds. It expands them. Reed listened as the council explained what had happened. Their studies showed that young aliens, raised with limited exposure to human language concepts, developed new neural pathways. Instead of breaking their minds, it made them more flexible. Your languages are still dangerous, Council Leader Prime admitted. But like many dangerous things, they can be beneficial when properly handled. The Council's new proposal was unexpected. The total ban would be lifted. Earth languages would be reclassified as controlled cultural assets. Special schools would be established to safely teach human language concepts. Neural shields would be optional, used only for those who wanted protection. Human literature would be gradually released from quarantine. But the most surprising change came from the aliens themselves. Many had started incorporating human-style creativity into their own communications. The galaxy was learning to play with words. In universities across the galaxy, new departments opened. Human linguistic arts. Young aliens eagerly signed up, wearing neural training shields that would gradually introduce them to metaphors, jokes, and poetry. The logic worlds reported an unexpected benefit. Exposure to human creative thinking helped them solve previously impossible problems. The hive minds discovered that human storytelling patterns enhanced their collective intelligence. Even the Department of Language Containment transformed. It became the Institute of Cultural Exchange, helping species safely explore each other's ways of thinking. 1 year after the ban had started, Ambassador Reed stood again in the council chamber. This time, she read a poem, carefully, with neural dampeners available for any who wanted them. To her surprise, most delegates chose to listen unshielded. As she finished reading, a young alien approached her. I have been practicing, they said proudly, what humans call wordplay. Would you like to hear? The joke wasn't very good, something about space rocks taking things for granted. But Reed laughed anyway. It wasn't about the quality of the joke. It was about what it represented. Across the galaxy, translation devices now carried a new warning. Caution. Contains human language elements. May cause unexpected joy, creativity, and growth. Earth's languages had transformed from a threat into a gift. It turned out that the very chaos that made human communication so dangerous also made it precious. In learning to handle human languages, the galaxy had learned something even more important: how to embrace new ways of thinking. As Reed left the council chamber that day, she heard something she never expected: an alien humming a human tune. The melody floated through the air, carrying with it the promise of a future where all species could share not just words, but dreams. Sometimes, she reflected, the most powerful weapons become the most powerful tools for change. All you need is the courage to use them wisely.